After a long journey, I found my luggage on the sidewalk in front of my house, along with a note. If you want to stay here, we have the garage. Best regards, your dear daughter-in-law. Before the taxi driver left, I called the bank. I'm the one who pays the mortgage, I said. Please check that. I stared at my 4 suitcases, stacked neatly on the sidewalk, unable to process what I was seeing. After a week visiting my sister in Cornwall, I just wanted to sink into my favorite armchair with a cup of tea in hand. Instead, I was standing in front of my own house, locked out. Dark rain clouds gathered above me as I pulled the note from under the handle of my largest suitcase. The handwriting was unmistakable, the slanted, spiky letters always hastily scrawled. If you want to stay here, we have the garage. Your dear daughter-in-law. My hands trembled as I reread the words. I have been in this house for 35 years. My husband, Arthur, and I built it together when our son, Julian, was just a small child. We planted every tree in the garden, chose every piece of furniture, painted every wall. Then, Arthur died 2 years ago. I agreed to transfer the house to Julian and his wife, Bryn, at least legally. But secretly, I was the one who continued to pay the mortgage. I grabbed my phone and called the bank before the taxi left. I needed confirmation of what I already knew. Yes, Mrs. Vance, the woman on the phone said, our records show that your automatic payment of €1,600 was received last Friday, as scheduled. Thank you, I whispered and hung up. A heavy raindrop hit my forehead as I stood there, 67 years old, looking at my belongings on the sidewalk. The sky opened up at that moment, as if giving me permission to break down too. I should have seen it coming. The furtive glances between Julian and Bryn, the not-so-subtle comments about retirement homes where I wouldn't have to do gardening anymore. How they had rearranged the living room when I visited my sister for Christmas last year, banishing my reading chair to the basement. Small things that, in the end, were not so small. The garage door was not locked. Inside, a double mattress leaned against the wall, next to a small nightstand and a lamp. My clothes hung on a mobile rack. My books, photos, and memories were stacked in cardboard boxes labeled Mom's Things in Bryn's handwriting. I let myself fall onto the mattress, the cold concrete floor under my feet. Through the small window, I could see the house where I had raised my son, buried my husband, and apparently lost my place in the world. My phone vibrated with a message from Julian. Mom, we need the space. Bryn needs a home office. The garage has everything you need for now. Don't make it difficult for us. Don't make it difficult? As if I were the problem. I've never been one to cry easily, but tears ran silent and hot down my cheeks. I thought of all the nights I spent with Julian when he had asthma attacks as a child, of the second job I took to finance his university when Arthur's business had difficulties, of the weekends I spent with my grandchildren so that Julian and Bryn could have time for themselves. And now I was a troublesome burden, banished to the garage. I didn't reply to Julian's message. Instead, I called my lifelong friend, Beatrix. Eleanor, what's wrong? She asked instantly, hearing the pain in my voice. I need a place to stay, I managed to say. The words stuck like broken glass in my throat. They've put me in the garage. Beatrix didn't ask questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. As I sat on the thin mattress, surrounded by the boxes of my life, I made a decision. This house had been my heart for 35 years. I had given it everything, my love, my savings, my dreams. And they thought they could just push me aside. The garage door vibrated as the rain outside intensified. I looked at my trembling hands and slowly closed them into fists. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't just Julian's mother or Arthur's widow. I was Eleanor Vance, and I was tired of being invisible. Beatrix's guest room was small, but it had a door with a lock and a window that let in real sunlight. After 3 days at the Sunset Motel, a name that seemed strangely appropriate for this chapter of my life, I was grateful to be in a place that cost me nothing. You can stay as long as you want, dear, Beatrix said, placing a cup of coffee in front of me. Walter and I have been rattling around this house like 2 peas in a pod since the children left. I grabbed the hot cup. I appreciate it, but this can't be permanent. I have to find out what's happening with the house. You mean your house? Beatrix corrected, her eyes narrowing. The one you're still paying for. Beatrix has been my friend for over 30 years. She knew Arthur, watched Julian grow up, and was by my side through thick and thin. And unlike my son, she remembered who I was before I became invisible. I keep thinking about the moment everything started to change, I said, looking at my coffee. After Arthur's death, I thought transferring the house to Julian and Bryn would help them. They had just had Clara, and money was tight. And they took advantage, Beatrix completed. The memories emerged like bruises I had avoided touching. 6 months after the funeral, Bryn began to redecorate the house because it needed a refresh. My suggestions were rejected. My things were banished to closets, then to the basement, and finally, to storage boxes. Do you know what Bryn said when I protested because she wanted to throw away Arthur's fishing gear? I asked. She said, "We have to look forward, not live in a museum." As if my husband's memories were just junk to be cleared out. Beatrix reached her hand across the table and squeezed mine. And Julian? Didn't he defend you? I laughed bitterly. Julian said I was being difficult, that I needed to adapt to the new normal. The control was so gradual that I barely noticed. First, they took over the kitchen, criticizing my cooking. Then came the complaints. My TV shows were too loud, my friends came to visit too often, my garden took up too much space in their garden. Every concession I made only emboldened them more. The worst part is that I allowed it, I said. I kept paying the mortgage because I was afraid they would have financial problems. I wanted to help, to be useful, to be loved. You tried to buy your place in their lives, Beatrix said softly. The truth of her words hurt. I had bought my place in that house, in my own son's life, payment by payment. My phone vibrated with a message from Julian. Mom, when are you coming for the rest of your things? We need to turn the garage into a playroom for Clara. I showed the message to Beatrix. That little ingrate. She hissed. Eleanor, there's something you should know. I didn't want to tell you because I knew it would hurt, but you deserve the truth. My stomach clenched. What? Last month at the book club, Bryn was there. She had a couple of glasses of wine and started talking about her plans. They want to sell the house and buy a new one in the Chilterns. The walls seemed to tilt. Sell my house? They think it's their house, Beatrix said in a low voice. And legally it is. But morally, that's another story. I thought of the 35 years of memories engraved on those walls. Arthur and I bringing little Julian home, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, the garden Arthur planted for our 20th anniversary, Arthur's last breaths in our bedroom, surrounded by the life we had built together. And they would sell it all to strangers without batting an eye. What do I do? I whispered. Beatrix's eyes hardened with determination. First, you stop paying their mortgage. Let's see how quickly their plans change when the bank calls. Second, you talk to my nephew Reese. He's a lawyer and specializes in the rights of the elderly. There has to be a legal avenue. I'm not elderly, I protested weakly. Beatrix raised an eyebrow. You're old enough to be treated with respect, and that's not happening here. She was right. For 2 years, I had made myself smaller, quieter, so as not to be a burden. And where had that gotten me? Kicked out of my own house, my belongings in boxes, my existence reduced to an inconvenience. All right, I said, straightening my shoulders. Let's talk to Reese. Beatrix squeezed my hand. That's my girl. And Eleanor, don't forget who you are. You're not just Julian's mother or Arthur's widow. You're Eleanor Vance. It's time everyone remembered that. For the first time since I found my luggage on the sidewalk, I felt a spark of hope. Or maybe it was determination. Either way, I wouldn't give up without a fight. The next day, I was on the porch of my house, my heart pounding as I rang the bell. I had lived in this house before Julian was born, and now I was a visitor asking for permission to enter. Bryn opened the door, her surprise quickly covered by a forced smile. Oh, we weren't expecting you. I need to talk to you both, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course, come in. The living room had changed again since I left. My reading lamp was gone, replaced by a modern floor lamp I didn't recognize. The family photos I had arranged on the mantelpiece were reorganized, with some of Arthur's photos missing. Julian came out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a dishcloth. Mom, what are you doing here? I'm here to talk about the house, I said. Beatrix told me you want to sell it. Their exchanged glances confirmed everything. We were going to tell you, Julian said, not looking me in the eye, when everything was finalized. Finalized? I repeated. This has been my home for 35 years. Your father and I built it. We raised you here. Bryn sighed theatrically. Eleanor, we understand you're emotionally attached, but we have to do what's best for our family now. Your family, I repeated. And what am I? An uncomfortable silence set in. Mom, Julian finally said in a condescending tone, you transferred the house to us. We appreciate everything you've done, but it's our property now. We decide what happens with it. I took a deep breath. I've been paying the mortgage for the last 2 years. 1,600 euros every month from my account to keep a roof over your heads. Another look between them. They knew. That was your decision, Bryn said coolly. We never asked you to. My hands began to tremble. I did it to help you. Because that's what family does. And we're grateful, Julian said, although his tone suggested the opposite. But that doesn't change the legal situation. The house is ours. So my 35 years here, my financial support, my role in this family, none of that counts? Julian shrugged, uncomfortable but unmoved. Mom, you're making this more dramatic than it is. We can help you find a nice apartment for seniors. I don't need a nice apartment for seniors. I snapped. I need my son to show some decency and respect. Bryn stepped forward, her smile syrupy. Oh, I think you're upset. Maybe we should continue this conversation another time. That's when I knew. I really knew there was no way to fix this. The son I had raised, whom I loved with all my heart, was gone. In his place was a stranger who saw me as nothing more than an obligation, a problem to be solved. I've stopped the automatic mortgage payments, I said quietly. Julian's expression changed instantly. What? If you want to sell my house, you'll have to pay for it yourselves. We can't. Bryn blurted out, her voice shrill. What about our credit score? We have plans. Yes, I said. I've heard the Chilterns are lovely this time of year. Julian's face darkened. Mom, this house was a gift from Dad to me. You know that. It was never really yours. Those words hit me like a punch. Never really yours. 35 years of my life, dismissed in 3 words. I understand, I said, my voice barely audible. Then I guess there's nothing more to discuss. I turned, my legs trembling. At the door, I stopped and looked back at my son, who no longer saw me. Your father would be ashamed of you, Julian. And for the first time, so am I. I walked out and closed the door softly behind me. The cool spring air soothed my hot cheeks as I walked down the driveway, away from the house that had never really been mine. Something inside me broke that day. But something else, something stronger, was forged in its place. The next morning, I received a call from the People's Bank. With a heavy heart, I answered, expecting questions about the missed mortgage payments. Mrs. Vance, this is Mr. Davies from the mortgage department, the man said. We've received a query to discuss the situation of your property on Maple Street. Yes, I believe so, I confirmed. I understand you've been paying for a property that is no longer in your name. Our records show continuous payments from your account for the last 26 months. Yes, I said, but I have decided to stop those payments. There was a pause. Mrs. Vance, I don't normally do this, but would you be willing to come to the branch to discuss it? There may be options you haven't considered. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Mr. Davies, a kind man Julian's age, who explained something called an equitable mortgage. In short, by making continuous mortgage payments on a property I didn't benefit from, I might have established an interest in the property, even without being on the deed. A spark of hope ignited in my chest. What does that mean, exactly? It means you could enforce a mortgage on the property for the amount you've contributed. They couldn't sell the house without settling that mortgage. For the first time since I found my luggage on the sidewalk, I felt a bit of control returning. One more thing, Mr. Davies said, his voice lowering. Your son called this morning, very upset about the missed payment. It seems he doesn't understand how mortgages work. That didn't surprise me. Julian had always relied on others to handle the practical aspects of life, first on Arthur and me, now on Bryn and, apparently, on my monthly payments. What did you tell him? That a missed payment could affect his credit score and, in the long run, lead to foreclosure, Mr. Davies said. He didn't take it well. As if on cue, my phone vibrated with a message from Julian. Mom, we need to talk about the mortgage as soon as possible. I showed the message to Mr. Davies. What do you want to do, Mrs. Vance? He asked. It was a simple question, but no one had asked me that in years. What did I want? Not just regarding the house, but for my life. I thought about the confrontation with Julian and Bryn, their casual dismissal of my contributions, their assumption that I would continue to fund their dreams while being banished to the garage. I want what is rightfully mine, I said, surprised by the determination in my voice. Mr. Davies nodded, respect in his eyes. Then we'll make it possible. That afternoon, armed with the information from Mr. Davies and the legal advice from Reese, I took another unexpected step in my new life. I applied for a job. The help wanted sign in the window of the Rose Cafe had caught my attention on my way back to Beatrix's house. You want to be a waitress? Beatrix asked when I told her, laughing. I was a waitress all through university, I reminded her. And I need my own income. My own life. I can't stay in your guest room forever. Beatrix considered it. Well, the Rose Cafe has the best cakes in town. 2 days later, I had my first shift. My feet ached, my back throbbed at the end of it, but the tips in my pocket were mine, earned with my own hands. That simple satisfaction was something I hadn't felt in years. When I got back to Beatrix's house, exhausted but strangely invigorated, I had 6 missed calls from Julian on my phone. I listened to the first voicemail. Mom, the bank called about the mortgage. They mentioned something about an equitable mortgage. What are you doing? Call me immediately. I deleted the message without listening to the others. This time, Julian would have to wait for my convenience, not the other way around. Beatrix brought me a glass of wine and sat next to me on the porch swing. How do you feel? She asked softly. I considered it as I watched the sunset paint the sky in pink and gold. I feel like I've finally woken up, I said. Like I've been sleepwalking since Arthur died. And now? Beatrix asked. Now, I'm me again, I finished. I raised my glass for a toast. To Eleanor Vance. It's a pleasure to finally meet her. 3 weeks later, I had found a surprisingly pleasant routine. My tips were modest, but steady, and the physical work kept me busy. More importantly, I had a purpose again, a place to belong, people who counted on me. A life that was entirely mine. That's why seeing Julian standing awkwardly by the counter startled me. Mom, he said, his voice softer than I'd heard in years. Can we talk? Rosie, the owner, gave me a look. Take 15 minutes if you need it, she smiled. I led Julian to a corner booth, away from my regular customers, who by then were almost like friends. You look different, he said, eyeing my apron. I am different, I replied. Julian shifted uncomfortably. Mom, about the house. I'm not discussing that here, I interrupted. If that's why you're here, you're wasting your time. Please, he said, a hint of desperation in his voice. Bryn and I are in trouble. The bank has called, and our credit scores are suffering from the missed payment. I contemplated my son, his expensive watch, his carefully styled hair, the subtle scent of his cologne. Everything about him radiated entitlement and comfort, a life shielded by the sacrifices of others. What do you want from me, Julian? He leaned forward. We need you to help us resume the payments until we can sell the house. His audacity almost made me laugh. And what do I get out of it? We'll make sure you're well taken care of, he said, as if doing me a great favor. There's a wonderful retirement community in the West End. Stop, I said, raising a hand. I have no interest in being taken care of. I've taken care of myself and you for years. Julian's face tensed, his calm mask slipping. Be reasonable. You can't keep working here, he gestured dismissively toward the cafe. You're almost 68. I am 67, I corrected. And I'm fine. Fine, he said. What do you want? I want my house back. He blinked, then laughed nervously. That's impossible. We've already made an offer on the house in the Chilterns. That's not my problem, I said. Julian's expression darkened. It will be your problem if you want to have a relationship with your granddaughter. Or with us. The threat hung, ugly and blatant, between us. My own son, using my love for his daughter as leverage. Are you threatening to keep Clara away from me? He had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but he stood his ground. I'm just saying that families have to support each other. Bryn and I have a plan for our future, and you're getting in the way. Like I got in the way when I paid for his university? When I took care of Clara every weekend so he and Bryn could have their time. When I transferred the house to them and continued to pay the mortgage so they could save for the boat they bought last summer. That's not fair, Julian said, his face red with anger. No, I agreed. It's not. My break is about to end, I said, sliding out of the booth and readying my apron. I have to get back to work. Mom, please, Julian's voice cracked slightly. We need this. The house in the Chilterns is perfect. We can't lose it. For a moment, I saw the little boy who would climb onto my lap with scraped knees, expecting me to fix everything. But that boy was gone. In his place was a man who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end. I'll think about it, I said finally. But first, I need something in writing from you and Bryn. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Reese Waller's office. Relief flooded Julian's face. Thanks, Mom. You won't regret it. As he left, I wondered if I wasn't already regretting it. The next day, I arrived at the office early, my stomach a knot of nerves. I had barely slept, replaying the decision I had made in the middle of the night over and over. Julian and Bryn arrived promptly at 2, both dressed as if for a business meeting. Bryn's smile was tense but triumphant as they sat across from Reese's desk. Thank you for coming, Reese began formally. Mrs. Vance has considered your request regarding the property on Maple Street. We appreciate it, Bryn interrupted smoothly. We're sure we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone. Reese slid a document across the table. This is what Mrs. Vance proposes. Julian took it, glanced at the contents, his expression changing from hope to confusion, and then to fury, in a matter of seconds. What is this? He asked. It's my condition for releasing the mortgage, I said calmly. I will continue to pay the mortgage, but the house will be sold to me, not to strangers. Bryn snatched the paper from Julian. This is ridiculous. You want us to sell you the house for the remaining balance of the mortgage? It's worth at least triple that. It's worth what I've invested in it, I replied. 35 years of payments, repairs, improvements. Julian's face was now an alarming shade of red. You can't do this. The house is legally ours. With a sidelong glance, Reese explained, the equitable mortgage significantly complicates any possibility of a sale. We'll fight this, Bryn said, her voice icy. We'll hire our own lawyer. I nodded, expecting that response. You can try. But the legal process will take time. Months, maybe years. Your credit scores will continue to suffer, and your dream house in the Chilterns will be bought by someone else. That truth hit hard. Julian and Bryn had overextended themselves, counting on a quick sale of my house to finance their ascent. Did you plan this from the beginning? Julian accused me, his voice barely a whisper, since you banished us to the garage? No, I said softly. Only recently have I stopped allowing myself to be taken advantage of. Bryn stood up abruptly. We need to discuss this in private. As they left, Reese nodded at me in approval. You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Vance. I wasn't so sure. The look of betrayal in Julian's eyes haunted me. Had I become as calculating and cold as them? Before I could think further, the office door opened. Julian and Bryn returned, their faces stern but resigned. We accept your offer, Julian said rigidly. But I hope you understand what this means for our relationship. I looked my son directly in the eyes. I do. And I hope you understand someday what it meant to put my luggage on the sidewalk. The first night back in my house, I couldn't sleep. I wandered from room to room, touching the familiar walls, running my hand over the doorframe where we had marked Julian's height every year. In the kitchen, where Arthur and I had danced on our 30th wedding anniversary, I stood still. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in Reese's office. 3 months of legal procedures, tense conversations with Julian and Bryn as they reluctantly moved out, and the slow reconstruction of my life. The house was both familiar and strange. Bryn had painted some rooms a modern gray and white. The warm yellows and blues that Arthur and I had chosen were gone. The kitchen had been renovated with sleek, impersonal appliances. But beneath the aesthetic changes, The foundations of the house were still there, the creak of the third step on the stairs, the way the afternoon sun streamed through the arched window, the slight slope of the floor in the upstairs hallway that Arthur never got around to fixing. In the master bedroom, now empty except for the bed I had brought from Beatrix's guest room, I stood still. This room, where Arthur and I had shared our lives, where he had taken his last breath, felt somehow sacred. "I'm home," I whispered, as if he could hear me. The silence that answered was not lonely, but peaceful. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, the doorbell rang as I was unpacking my modest dinnerware. I opened the door to find Beatrix, standing with a pot and a bottle of wine. "Housewarming party," she announced, marching into the kitchen. "Although technically, it's more of a homecoming." I laughed and followed her. "It feels like both, to be honest." Beatrix set her gifts on the counter and inspected the kitchen. "My goodness, what did that woman do to your beautiful oak cabinets?" "She painted them gray and replaced all the knobs with something called brushed nickel," I said. "Apparently, oak is outdated." Beatrix snorted. "You know what's outdated? Kicking your own mother-in-law out onto the street." We both laughed, though the pain behind the humor remained. "Have you heard from them?" Beatrix asked, as she helped me unpack. I shook my head. "Since the closing, Julian has made it clear that I chose the house over them." "That's not what happened, and you know it," Beatrix said firmly. "You chose self-respect. There's a difference." I wasn't sure Julian would ever see it that way, but I had accepted my decision. The alternative, continuing to let them take advantage of me while treating me like a footnote, was no longer an option. "Well," Beatrix said, opening the bottle of wine. "To new beginnings." We toasted, and I felt a wave of gratitude for the woman who had always been there for me when my own family was not. The following weeks brought a steady rhythm to my days. Mornings at the Rose Café, afternoons, I devoted myself to the slow task of restoring the house to make it mine again. I didn't have the money to replace all of Bryn's modern furniture, but I could add touches that brought warmth, colorful cushions, family photos back on the mantelpiece, Arthur's fishing gear hung with pride in the study. One Saturday morning, as I was planting tulip bulbs in the front garden, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. My heart skipped a beat when Julian got out, stopping awkwardly at the edge of the garden. "The flowers look good," he said. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Dad always liked tulips," he continued, surveying the garden. "I remember him planting them every autumn." I wiped the dirt from my hands. "What brings you here, Julian?" He shifted uncomfortably from one foot to the other. We couldn't buy the house in the Chilterns." It wasn't entirely unexpected. I suspected their financial situation was precarious, especially after the missed mortgage payments became public knowledge within the family. Their credit score, I imagined, had suffered a significant blow, making it nearly impossible for them to secure another loan. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, the words carrying a weight of genuine empathy despite the complex emotions swirling within me. Julian's gaze was fixed on his shoes, once pristine, expensive loafers now marred by the clinging dampness and dark stains of garden soil. The image was a stark contrast to the polished life he once led. "We managed to find an apartment," he offered, his voice subdued. "It's considerably smaller than what we're used to, a far cry from the house, but I suppose it's given us a different perspective on things, a chance to reevaluate what truly matters." I sensed a deeper current beneath his words, a hidden revelation waiting to surface. I remained silent, allowing him the space to continue at his own pace. "Bryn is pregnant again," he finally revealed, the words hanging heavy in the air. "Twins this time. They're expected to arrive sometime in January." "Congratulations, Julian," I responded softly, the words laced with a mixture of sincerity and a quiet contemplation. I wondered if this news was intentionally delivered to inflict some form of emotional pain, to serve as a reminder of the familial joys and milestones that had seemingly eluded me, the experiences I was supposedly missing. For the first time since his arrival, Julian met my gaze directly, his eyes searching mine with a newfound intensity. "Clara asks about you constantly," he said, his voice tinged with a hint of guilt. She's too young to fully understand the situation, why our visits have abruptly stopped, why she no longer gets to spend time with her grandmother. A sharp, bittersweet ache resonated within my chest, a profound longing for the little girl I adored. I missed my granddaughter terribly, the warmth of her hugs, the sound of her laughter filling the house. She's always welcome here, Julian, I assured him, my voice thick with emotion. Both of you are welcome to visit anytime. Julian offered a slight nod, a gesture of acknowledgement, then hesitated, as if grappling with unspoken thoughts. Mom, he began, his voice more hesitant now. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, reflecting on everything that's transpired between us. My breath hitched in my throat, a flicker of hope igniting within my heart, a desperate yearning for genuine understanding and reconciliation. I'm not suggesting that we handled everything perfectly, he continued, choosing his words with deliberate care. But you seem to prioritize the house above everything else, above the needs and well-being of the family. I'm not sure if I can completely forgive that, Mom. The fragile hope I had dared to entertain quickly dissipated, replaced by a familiar sense of disappointment. He still failed to grasp the core of my decision, the underlying motivations that drove my actions. I didn't choose the house over the family, Julian, I clarified gently, striving to maintain a calm and even tone. I chose not to be erased, to preserve my identity and legacy. There's a significant difference between the two. He responded with a subtle frown, a clear indication of his disagreement and persistent misunderstanding. Anyway, he continued, moving past the point of contention, I thought you deserved to know about the babies, to be informed of the upcoming addition to the family. And perhaps Clara can come to see you occasionally, if that's something you'd be okay with. It wasn't an apology, not even a semblance of one. But it represented a small step forward, a tentative gesture of connection, a tiny crack in the seemingly impenetrable wall that had formed between us. I'd like that very much, Julian, I replied, the words carrying a quiet sincerity. After Julian's departure, I sought solace on the porch swing, gently swaying back and forth as I attempted to process the complex emotions stirred by our conversation. My relationship with my son was undeniably damaged, possibly beyond repair. He remained unable to comprehend the depth of the hurt he had inflicted, the fundamental betrayal of trust that had shattered our bond. But despite everything, he had made the effort to come, to reach out, even if his attempt fell short of a full reconciliation. It was, at the very least, a beginning, not a definitive end. Later that evening, Beatrix and her husband, Walter, joined me, accompanied by Rosie from the local cafe and Reese with his wife. We gathered in my garden, the very same garden where I had celebrated Julian's graduation with a lavish party, where Arthur and I had commemorated countless wedding anniversaries, where life, in all its vibrant and unpredictable messiness, had unfolded. As the soft hues of dusk gently enveloped us, the conversation flowed easily and comfortably among those who had become my chosen family, the individuals who had offered unwavering support and companionship. A profound sense of peace washed over me, a feeling of contentment and belonging. I propose a toast, Beatrix announced, raising her glass with a flourish. To Eleanor Vance, a remarkable woman who reminds us all that it's never too late to reclaim your life, to embrace your own strength and independence. Everyone raised their glasses in unison, smiling warmly at me, their eyes filled with genuine affection and admiration. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening summer sky, I sat alone on the porch, enveloped by the familiar creaks and comforting sounds of the old house. My thoughts drifted to Arthur, to the rich and fulfilling life we had built together within these walls, to the son we had raised who had somehow lost his way amidst the complexities of life. I reflected on the woman I had evolved into in recent months, stronger, more resilient, more determined than ever before, completely unwilling to be diminished or defined by the convenience of others. The house represented far more than just walls and a roof providing shelter. It stood as a powerful testament to survival, to resilience, to the quiet, unwavering strength of a woman who had finally learned the importance of prioritizing her own well-being and happiness. I had come home, not only to this physical structure, but also to the essence of my own being, to the truest version of myself. And for the first time in many years, my life stretched before me, filled with a sense of limitless possibilities, opportunities that were entirely mine to explore and embrace.